Hey, it's Tanya, your money life coach. Welcome to the Average Joe Finances podcast. I just did an episode with Chad Olivier. It was a solo episode, and I'm so excited to share with you. This man is just super authentic, super cool. I love his vibe and his energy. But man, his advice on building a business and the financial side of that from his financial planning perspective, and if you're potentially thinking about selling a business long term or figuring that out, that's his niche. That's what he's been doing now. He's been in the financial services industry for well over 20 years, and he's just so passionate about it. And what I loved, and that I think you're going to get out of it, is just his heart for creating a legacy and being able to figure that out for your family, and really good tips on just the ins and outs of building a business the right way, strategically, financially. Man, I got so many good nuggets out of this episode. You guys are too. Listen to this episode with Chad Olivier and leave that 5-star review. Let me know what you think about this episode, and I'd love to hear from you. So thanks, tune in, and I'll talk to you soon.
This is Brandon Turner, and you are listening to the Average Joe Finances podcast.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below.
Hello, and welcome back to the Average Joe Finances podcast. I'm your host today, Tanya Schultz, the Money Life Coach, and we're so excited to welcome Chad Olivier. He's in from Baton Rouge, and I'm so excited to bring him on and share his expertise with you guys. So welcome, Chad. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Tanya.
Yeah, so let's get right into it and tell us like a little bit about yourself, your journey, and share your story with our audience.
Sure. So I've been in the financial planning business, financial services sector since 1996. Started off basically selling tax-free bonds to little old ladies, and then moved it up to actual financial planning. And I started my firm, Olivier Group, 2002. And we mostly manage individual investments, do financial planning, and help small business owners, especially with exit planning. I'm an actual certified exit planner also.
Wow, that's really cool. So go into that a little bit more, specifically in exit planning. I haven't heard too much about that. Are you mean exiting if somebody's like a company and then they're trying to sell that company?
Sure.
Maybe?
So it's mainly clients that are looking to get their business ready to sell, either to the next generation or to sell it out on the open market. And so we have a process that we go through that actually helps them along the way, even if they're not ready to, maybe they're not ready to sell for another 10 years. But we get it where they can get the most value out of that company. And if they bring it in the next generation, we start to get the next generation ready to receive the actual company and get them involved in the actual business.
Wow. So that's really interesting. Like, how is that? That's really like a niche that you
Mhm.
specialize in. And then what's that process like? How are you making money off that personally? I'm trying to,
Sure.
like, how do you, yeah, what does that look like?
Sure. So we do charge we charge planning fees. So this is part of planning for the actual business. And then we most of the time we're managing assets for the actual client that owns the business. So we have many business owners that we manage all of their investments. And then this is another part of their whole financial planning picture, is actually getting them ready for a possible sale. We have one client that he's not going to look to sell for the next 5 to 8 years. He's in a big expansion part of his business, but we're constantly looking at that business on a quarterly basis to make sure that it's ready to transition to the next level on what he wants it to do.
Okay. Wow, that's really cool. That must be, you must get all kinds of, that's never no day's the same, right? There's many different factors to that. Is this something, did you fall into this or how did you get started? You talked about briefly getting started, but what kind of led you on this path?
As far as the exit planning path, I fell into it. So I had two clients that were CEOs of the businesses that they founded, and they started going through the process of selling it. One client was looking to transition it to the next generation. And then as we went through that process, it was like, no, this is not going to work. He's going to have to sell this outright. And
Mm,
so we had to go a different angle with that. And then the other client he's ready to get out. He's actually in the process right now. We're at the end of that process. That's taken about 3 years now to go through this whole process. And I stepped in as the lead, helping go through this very detailed organizational structure of valuing the company, bringing in all the different experts, and I ended up being the lead on that whole entire system. And so then I started looking out there and seeing, how can I be certified in this area? And there's a designation called the SEPA, which is a Certified Exit Planning designation. And I got that designation to help structure this whole entire process. And now we have I say a piece of the business that we're concentrating on with a handful of clients that we're helping right now through this whole process.
that's great. And then is finance something you went to school for, or how did you fall into, I don't want to say fall into because maybe it was planned, but how did you get into financial services in the first place?
Sure. So when I was 11 years old, my grandfather passed away, lung cancer. He was only 54 years old, and Papa Bill wore a suit to work, and so everybody else in my family were more blue collar workers. And he worked at Kaiser. He was in management at Kaiser, and so I watched him through the years, what he did, and that he got to dress in a nice suit and stuff. So that's very neat. And then when he passed away, my grandmother was well taken care of throughout her entire life, and she just passed away at 93 years old a year and a half ago. Yeah, and I saw that as a preteen and as a teenager, and I said, "Mama Jenny looks like she's got it all together with money." And so I started to really get interested in money, and I started reading books, and then started Forbes magazine, started reading Forbes magazine, Fortune as a teenager. I thought I was gonna be a professional tennis player, but that
Okay.
kind of went away when I went to college. I played college tennis at Northeast Louisiana University in Monroe. And I thought I was very good, and I was very good in the state of Louisiana, but not these a lot of players on the team were from all over the world. And from there, I was a finance major, and then I started working at a bank. And while I was at a bank, they had a financial planner inside the bank, and I told her that I would work for her so many days a week for free. And
Mm,
so I interned for her for free, and just really, really wanted to be in something with money is what I knew I wanted to be in.
yeah, because you saw how it was helping your grandma and your family. That was the main thing that's
Right.
really powerful. Like, okay, not just about the money's nice, but being able to help in that scenario or for the future is really,
That is, yep, that's true.
yeah, that's really cool. So then going from there and then building your own firm, what was that gap in between there? Like how does it go from this to now having a team and having your own?
Yes, that was tough because I got into the business at 22 years old, and didn't have any contacts with anyone, real money, and just had to start off trying to find clients, work many hours. And at the time I started reading how other successful advisors started doing things.
Mhm.
And so I then, from that point, I said, okay, I need to just mimic what these other advisors are doing, and started to do that. And then in 2000, it broke off and started my new firm. And I had less than 10 million in investable assets. We're at about 460 million now in investable
Wow.
assets that we manage. Yeah. So it's been a great journey, but along the way, it's just constantly learning and seeing how other successful people have done it before, and then adding your little spin to it, putting it all together. I, you know, I decided to write a book, so I wrote a couple of books, one for doctors, one financial planner, one for dentists. Then I ended up writing for the Louisiana Dental Association. So this is all the dentists in Louisiana. Every quarter they get there's a financial planning article in their magazine. And I've been doing that for over 20 years now. And then from there, the local news program started having me on as guests. And then I had the news station approach me about 8 years ago about doing a financial planning segment on their network during the news. And so I've
Oh,
been doing that for
wow.
about 8 years. Yeah. So it's all just snowballed. I always say is it starts off something small and you just keep adding to it, and then it just snowballs. And then we've just been very successful over the years because of all the stuff I've been doing for the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, just takes the time. There's that like tipping point and then the consistency of doing it over and over again. Did you have any like mentors or who else helped you? Like you said, you obviously a lot of people in our audience are personal development driven and get coaches and things like that. So was that a part of learning from somebody else ahead of you? What was that like?
I'm a big advocate on just reading how others have been successful in businesses. So I've gone back and just have read biographies on everyone from Steve Jobs to Jeff Bezos, and then John D. Rockefeller has a great biography, Titans. I'm an audio book guy, so I'm saying I'm reading. I'm mostly listening to them,
Yeah.
but listening to Titans, I remember it was so many hours. I think it was like 100 and something hours that book. But just going back and listening on how people have been successful and what they have done, and just trying to incorporate that in things that you do on an everyday basis. And that's helped me out. And in our business, Ron Carson he founded his company Carson Wealth, and he ran in a very successful business, and we're affiliated with them. And I know Ron personally, but I got into his coaching program and his coaching system back in 2002, and that helped me tremendously just to see how he built it and what he did to do things along the way. And then you just go out there and you do it. But I think the big word you said is consistency. You got to be consistent. Many times, especially young people in a business, they try something, they try it, and then they're out. I always say, like, when I do something, like, I'm in it for the long haul. And just like when I got the TV to do the TV station, like, I do not want anybody else to have the TV station. I want it to be me. I'm making sure that I'm going to keep that spot. And the same thing with writing the article for the Louisiana Dental Association. So all of those things are just like building blocks that you just have to keep at it on a consistent basis.
Yeah, no, that's super great advice. And I think today society, that instant gratification, people wanting to get rich quick and everything to happen overnight because they see it on social media is very prevalent. And I think a lot of what we talked about on this podcast too is having that passion to help people. If you don't have that passion for why you're doing something, then you're gonna be like, ah, this isn't working. You know what I mean? For me, being able to empower and help women with their finances, with their financial foundation, is something that was personal to me and something that, sometimes if things aren't working, I'm like, that's my mission and that's my goal. So what is that mission and goal for you like long term now? What does your future goals look like?
Sure, sure. We've developed a great staff here, and I always say that the way to realistically develop your team is that you got to make sure you put training and hours into the team, because we have very smart young people. So we have young people that are in their upper 20s, early 30s that are extremely smart, but they need a little bit more. They need a little bit more training. They need a little more discipline. And so we've done that, and we got a great training program, and even young advisors coming into the business. So we have a young advisor here that's been with me for a couple of years. It's a slow process, but part of their goals that they have is actually just doing role plays with me and sitting in so many meetings.
Yeah.
This is, you put it as their goals. And so then the team keeps getting better. We keep getting better, and we grow as individuals and grow as a team. And so I believe that's extremely important. In the next 5 years, we look to be over $1 billion in assets of
Amazing.
management.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's our goal. And we're at our growth rate, we're somewhere like the last 5 years, we're almost at 28% a year growth rate. We've got
Dang, that's
incredible. Yeah, we
huge.
got incredible.
Congrats.
Yes. So yes, thank you. So we have incredible growth rate. We're a young, growing company, but we're always learning. So everybody here is always learning. So even when we do goals as everyone's individual goals, one of those everybody has 3 goals. One of those 3 goals is always something to do with learning. So
Mm.
everybody needs to be learning. We need to be advancing, and we need to give the clients the best service that they can get out there.
Yeah, that was with another podcast I was doing last week. What that owner was saying as well about the growth and investing back into your team, I think is crucial to be able to empower them and help them feel like they have like leadership capabilities, and then everybody's like a team, like you said. So yeah, I love that you're doing that. And I know you want to talk about. I want to talk about what do you see, kind of switching this a little bit. What do you see like some businesses are doing wrong with their finances? What are they doing wrong? I know you want to talk about like culture and continued growth, but from your perspective, financially and within the company, what are companies doing that they could improve upon?
I love this quote from David Packard from Hewlett Packard. David Packard says, "More businesses fail from indigestion than from starvation." And what that basically means is many businesses, they just keep trying to like step on the gas, grow, and they're doing so many different things that they actually risking they have this it's risk to the actual business into the business model. So you always need to make sure that you are aware that where you are in the business cycle and how much debt you want to take on as a business owner and when to press on the gas and when to let off on the gas a little bit. Just we go through different periods of time where, especially most business owners are optimistic. I'm a very optimistic person. And so,
That's good.
you know,
That's
even
good.
when exactly, even when the markets are doing terrible, like I'm just like, it's there, it's gonna come back. That's just how I
Yeah.
live my life. And I'm very optimistic. But with many business owners, you'll get that optimism and you'll get it where they're going to buy another company, expand. That's where they can truly get in trouble. And they got to make sure that the debt that they're carrying on the company just doesn't sink the company. And so we've had many small business owners come in with the financial planning part of it, and we're looking at their projections and what we're seeing going forward, when they can possibly sell the business, retire, and is so much debt on one side of the equation that it gets a little scary. And it's but in the and most of the time the business owner is just, hey, but no, everything is great, we're going. But
Yeah.
when things aren't so great, that's where you get in trouble. And a lot of times that has happened, especially if you just look at what happened over the past year and a half when the interest rates started going up, and you had all of these venture capital firms that were just plowing money into these technology companies that were on a go, and they were just borrowing. All of a sudden, interest rates went from a 3 to 4% range to now 9 to 10% on those businesses, and they can't sustain. And so that does
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. I was just smirking at that when you were saying that because I was getting PTSD for a minute because a company that I worked for was doing just that. They're like every year they were trying to buy another company and they were planning to sell. And it was just it felt so chaotic and it was so stressful because what they were doing too is like giving all of us more responsibility, but they weren't paying us more to operate on that level. And it was like, what is our and we didn't even have some foundation in place. Somebody described it as like building a skyscraper on a parking lot or like on dirt. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they were just trying to the foundation wasn't in place. So yeah, I can definitely see company can get consumed with this is the right thing. This is the right thing and grow when they like need to stabilize in some sense and then go to the next thing. But it must be
Yeah. And
hard
so
to
even
figure that balance out, right? And that's what you help them do is figure that out.
It is, and even in our business personally, the all the growth we've had, I have not bought any businesses. This is actually just from our firm, just bringing in more clients, bringing in more assets, and working what we have in the firm. But if we would buy another firm, many times, many business owners don't realize you need to, just like you said, you need to increase staff. You can't just do everything with what you have and try to just again gobble up someone else and with the hopes that everything's going to be totally fine, because it's not going to be. More business, more work means more team members.
Yeah, amen.
Yep.
I
Yes,
feel
ma'am.
that for sure. Let's get into what do you see as like the evolution of financial planning and that wealth management for, as you quote, the modern era? What does that look like for businesses and for people in general?
Sure. One thing we do that's different than any other planning firms is that we always put out there we handle everything with a dollar sign. Anything with a dollar sign, even if we're not an expert in that field, we're always the point person, and we find who's the expert, and they're going through us to help the clients. Looking forward, what's incredible is there's so much information out there, and it's information overload. And I remember, back in the day when the internet was really starting to get going, and in our business, the fear was that everybody's going to go online and just do it themselves. They're not going to need us anymore. What's amazing is they need us even more. Like, it's because it's so much information. They're always going to have you do it yourself, and they need to be doing it themselves. But on our side, especially when you get clients that have a complicated situations in their life, like they would bring us on, and we're able to manage the assets, do all the planning, the insurance, and just take a look at everything financial and putting it together. And tax laws are constantly changing. Estate planning is changing, passing those assets on to the next generation. Business planning is ongoing, changing. So it's we don't, in our business, we don't have any lack of future business or services, because it's all sitting there in front of us. It's so complicated. And it makes sense that we come in and we organize their whole entire world and make sure everything's done correctly. That's what we're saying. Everything's becoming more complicated. Then we have AI, which is just an interesting beast by itself, because it's, as you depend upon more on something like AI, then you got to make sure that the information is the correct information that's going into the system. It's coming out.
Yeah, I always think still that level of personalization and having that expert to learn from and to I talk like this in my coaching program. It's okay, when I go to get something done on my car, I don't want to do that work. I don't want to like do my own oil change and do some of that work, but I want to go there and know what they're doing and give that to the expert to do. So it's the same thing. And that's another thing though in society today, especially on social media. Invest yourself, do it yourself. It's promoted as like kind of this glamorous thing that you should know how to do. And so I think it's really good what you're saying about no, let's actually talk to an expert and figure out what that looks like.
And even when you're investing, what worries me is that against instant gratification, you invest in something, especially with the Robin Hoods and all these other apps, that you invest in something, and then they're in it and then they're out it. They're in, they're out in of investment. And I'm saying that's not how you make real wealth. Making real wealth is being in a company where they just starting to have growth, and then staying with them the next 20 years when they have real growth. That's where you make real wealth, not going from this price to that price and realizing a profit of just whatever it is, $10 a share, and thinking that's investing. That's not actually investing. That's a little bit more on the side of the gambling side, not the investing side of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's what is glamorized, just knowing, oh, thinking you can just make quick money and do all that, and you don't understand the long-term impacts of investing. And so I think that's really good that you guys are trying to promote that as well. What are some, before we get into the final round of questions, what are some strategies that business owners and families can think about to build that legacy and leave a legacy for a face? Because I know that's super important and passionate on your side.
Sure. First of all, work with a certified exit planner. I believe that's important. See where your business is, and then do comparisons of the top businesses in those areas on how you can possibly improve the bottom line. Also, to make sure the business is its own separate entity. We've run across this many times, that the business owner is just like me, Olivier Group, Chad Olivier. I'm a everything about me in my family is Olivier Group. And my boys, I have 4 boys, and they're wearing Olivier Group attire all the time. Yeah, it tends to blur it a little bit, thinking that you are the business, but you actually aren't. The business is its own entity. It needs to be treated as its own entity. It has its own tax ID number. It has its own balance sheet. It's not part of your balance sheet, even though you may be owner of it, but it has to be treated that way. And that's extremely important, because so many times we meet with the business owner, and they're living through the business, they're doing everything through the business. But if you're doing that, it's very difficult to ever sell the business. If you're just everything is tied into that actual business. So it has to be running like it's its own efficient entity, is what it needs to be doing. And you need to be able to lead that business, but in order for it to give the maximum value to the next generation or to someone else buying it, it has to actually be a business.
Oh man, yeah, that's really good and really smart, obviously. But I think so many business owners, they tie their identity to the business. You know what I mean? And that's that separate thing too. You aren't the business needs to operate, because especially when you're starting a business, you generally are doing everything, and you have to start to give other people the ability to take some of that work off your plate. But yeah, people still get caught up in I am the business, and to give it, I'm assuming you're training and helping your boys be able to take that over. And then whether they do or don't, it still might be the Olivier Group, but live in a different way.
That's true. And again, I have it all over my shirt. I'm all over town and all the boy. It's not easy to separate it, but it does. It has to, and you have to have team members that can step up and do things in the business, and it's not just a one person show. And many times, Tanya, is I've seen it where I'll have a client that is starting their own business. They're at a firm for many years. They want to start their own business. And when we really dive into it, the reasons why they want to start the business, and they start going through the reasons, like, oh, more freedom, and I'm going, okay, who are you going to hire? Oh, it's just going to be me. Then you've just gave yourself, all you did was give yourself a job, and this job is going to be a job that you're going to be working way more than you were at the other job,
Yeah.
but you'll have your name on it. But that's really not a business. You just gave yourself a job. So in order to have a business, you got to think ahead and figure out when you can start delegating parts of that business off, and that you're not just the main center of that business. Like, you actually start delegating and actually have it as actual business.
Yeah, no, so true. I think I'm reading the podcast I was listening to, but they were talking about how they create like the SOPs for the business and how they train people. And that's all things that I think, especially if you like never started a business before, hopefully you've worked for a company that you have that foundation, but there's pretty big learning curve with like actually running a business, like you said, and making it successful. So I love that. And I'm going to jump into the final round. Let's get into it. So what's one of the biggest mistakes, or your biggest mistake that you've ever made when it comes to your finances or business life?
I had somebody that I trusted in my business that got a little bit too close to the financials, and I took my eye off the ball for a little bit, and it cost me. And that's probably my biggest mistake. And I make sure that I have 2 CPA firms that do all my finances, but I am on top of all of it. And I can tell you how much is in every account that I have on any given day that I'm constantly looking at. So I took my eye off of it for a little bit, and it hurt me.
Wow. Was it like a partner or somebody within the company that just
Somebody within the company, yeah, somebody within the company that had those duties, and yeah, just it's a lot of things were happening that shouldn't have been happening. And but again, you tend to get a little bit relaxed and saying, okay, this person's handling, and then they just did not do a very
Yeah.
good job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the scary part about owning a business, is like having to trust people with a lot of those things, and then potentially that stuff like that happening. But I think that's a really good reminder to make sure that the numbers are in the business with the financials, which is something that I also coach people on too, is you need to know what's going on like at all times on some level. Like I said, You take your car to the dealer, you don't just hand it off, be like, do whatever, give me the bill. It's what are you doing here? You know what I mean? What's going on? You need to
Yeah,
know
even
that.
though I have those finance people that are doing my, again, QuickBooks and all the taxes, but I need to be abreast of everything that's going on and know how much is in accounts and why things are happening. And that is one of the, as a CEO or as a business owner, you need to know your numbers.
Yeah, for sure. What is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started out building your business?
I guess how to hire people. And I read many books on it, on how to hire, but as you start really getting into it, you start to see mistakes over and over again. What's good hires and what's not so good hires.
Probably the most
And
stressful part of owning a business. One of the
it
most.
it really is. It really is finding that next person. And what looks good on paper may not be exactly what that person is. And so you need to, if you find out really soon after you hire them, then you need to make a decision very quickly. Because I've had a couple of them drag on a little bit that shouldn't have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's the really difficult part. Do you have any tips or tricks you would recommend to someone that's just getting started, either in business or investing specifically today?
Sure. In investing, get on a system with investing and just do it. Meaning that if you have a retirement plan at work and you may look at your finances and say, "Oh, I can't afford this," take 10% and just automatically do it and do your budget after you actually pay yourself. They say called pay yourself first. You pay into that retirement account 10% each paycheck and make sure that all the rest of the expenses do not go over what that budget is. And then also having savings account. We meet with so many individuals that don't even have 1 month's worth of expenses in a savings account. And typically you want around 6 months of expenses. So if your expenses are $5,000 a month, you should have 30,000 just that you can easily get to in some type of a savings account. And then for business owners, and you can do this as individuals too, which helped me over the years, is to have multiple accounts in different areas, meaning that my tax account I send to a certain checking account. So as money comes in, I'm sending it. It's got designations. Everything's got a place where it needs to go. It's just not sitting in your checking account. When you start to, especially when you start to do well and you start to see your checking account build up, many times you get the false impression that you're doing really well, and then all of a sudden a tax bill hits, and you're like, "Oh, I didn't know taxes were going to come this quarter be this much." So you got to make sure you have different accounts set, and then that's what I always advise business owners. You have a working capital account personally. You have a working capital account for your business. You have a tax account. You have an investing account. You have a savings account. Send them all different places.
Yep, that's what I would recommend too. I do the same thing for sure. And getting in that habit, being disciplined to, like you said, start investing for the long term, knowing your goals, and then having those separate tax accounts. I worked with several clients who have had crazy back taxes that they're just paying or aren't saving enough, like you said, don't have that separate account because that comes last.
Right. I had a
Oh,
cli
you're
I had
not-
a client that I know I had a client that had a line of credit that he would always borrow against to pay for taxes each quarter.
Oh shit.
And to me, that
Oh,
was, yeah,
God.
it just blew my mind. I said, "Why are you doing this? You're making such a good living. Why?" "Oh, it's just nothing left." I'm like, "Okay, we got to stop that now." So this is it. Let's set up an
Yeah.
account where you're
Yeah,
putting
you're
money
not set
into
up
it.
properly or overspending or you're not charging people enough. Something's going on. My mom worked in HR for a long time and she was always like, you wouldn't believe the amount of people who like pull money out of their like 401k and you leverage against that. And I was like, oh God, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
No, I
She's
know.
like, but that's why again, having an advisor or some expert to be like, nope, that's a bad idea. And here's why. Instead of just being like, I need this money or whatever's going on is great. So we started talking about like some books that you read and things like that. Do you have any favorite business investing or real estate or whatever it is, like investing books that you like or podcasts that you listen to?
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. That's going way back. I think he wrote that in the 1930s. I always think that's like a good base book. I've had my all four of my boys read that. My boys go from 19, 17, 15, and 11 years old. That's a great one. And then Dale Carnegie's got very good ones too. How to Win Friends, Influence People. Some good basic ones out there. And then if you really start to dive into some different books, there's one called The Rockefeller Habits when you are a business owner, and it talks about JD Rockefeller and how he ran meetings, how he ran his business. And so I thought that was a good one. And of course, you got a great podcast here. So I would, as far as podcasts, this is a good one. Another one, there's a podcast out there called Founders Podcast, and he dives into biographies of business owners, people that founded their companies, and that's a good one too. And then there's another one on the Nike one I thought was an excellent. I'm drawing a blank on that one, but it's the
Oh yeah, the
it's
one that
it
they made a movie too.
yes, that's
So
a
good.
very yes,
Yeah.
Phil Knight.
Knight.
Yeah. So that's an excellent one too. And I'm a big biography guy. Anything with Steve Jobs and anything with Amazon, any of those people everyone that started businesses from the ground up just fascinate.
Yeah, I think we see the results and people are like, oh, success, and know what it actually took to build, especially like the Nike movie. No, here's what it actually took for them. They were a failure for a long time. It was crazy. Yeah, I love this type of stories too. It's not, oh, it just magically happened.
Right.
A lot of struggle to find success. I love that. In closing, where can people find more information about you? I know I want to hear about your books for those industries as well, your website, and any social media.
Sure. So if you go to oliviergroup.com, Olivier group.com, and you can get all the information about me from that. And if you want to reach out to us, there's a spot there that you can hit contact us, and one of our advisors will contact you. Also on that site's got my books and has all the links to all the social media that's out there with us too.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like you have some great books and some resources for dentists and business owners in specific fields, which I think would be really beneficial for people too. So thank you so much for doing today. I loved this conversation. I think you gave so many great nuggets just for business owners and financial planning in general. So thanks for coming on today. Appreciate you, Chad. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you so much for joining us on the Average Joe Finances podcast. And make sure to go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode, what really resonated with you from what Chad was saying. So aloha from Lake Tahoe, and Mike says aloha from Hawaii and from Louisiana. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tanya. Bye.
Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.